Welcome to Successfully Ambiguous, the podcast that asks, when opportunity knocks, will you be ready to answer? I'm Christine Brooks Cappadocia, Assistant Vice President of Continuing Studies at York University. And today we'll meet Priya Bates. Priya is a master communicator, a champion for diversity, and a small business owner who has changed the way organizations think across this country. And today we'll hear how Priya has learned how to accept risk by embracing and reframing failure to come out with more opportunity. So let's open the door and meet Priya Bates. Priya, you are a master communicator, a fellow of IABC, a business person, a champion of DEI, and of just growth and empowerment in general. It is such a pleasure to have you here. Our paths have crossed many times over the years. Usually, whenever I was doing something kind of new and neat and needed some help, you would be there. So I'm just grateful that you're on this next journey with me too. Uh, so
Well, I'm
welcome,
happy to be here.
welcome. Um, so I think probably the best place to start. We're here to help students and mid-career learners and kind of figure out how to navigate this new non-linear career path that we're all on. Things are changing very quickly with AI and just the world is not linear anymore. So tell me a little bit about you started out in marketing and comms like me and made the jump to internal comms, which is not something I knew existed when I first started working in communications. Tell me how you made that leap.
Oh, it's funny that you talk, Christine, about things being nonlinear, and that you refer to it as now. And I'd probably argue that it's never been linear. If you talk to anyone, and as you go through this podcast season, that you'll find that it's never that straight line path. It's always a little jagged, right, and crooked. And it's because you're learning about yourself. And when I always talk to people about, enjoying the journey and be open to listening to what inspires you, what works and what doesn't. And I say the same thing to my kids. You learn about yourself along the way, and life takes you in different directions depending on where you are. So for me, it was definitely, I heard about PR. Didn't even know what that was. I graduated with a science degree from Western. So just so you know that. So, neuropsychology, the brain and behavior. So that was a big, change, deciding to go into PR, a field I'd never heard of. When I graduated from PR, my mind was saying, I got the science degree and now I've got the PR skills. And how do I combine the two? And I thought, oh, I'll do PR in pharmaceutical and started out in pharmaceutical marketing research with a company. Um, because I understood the stats and did some communication for them, and then somehow went into the technology industry because that was around we always referred to it as the boom, bust, and echo when the tech industry was starting to grow, when digital communication was starting to become a thing. So I stepped into customer communication first in at what is now Rogers. It was Cantel way back when, for those who can remember that. So started with customer communication, and then started working with a distributor of technology, who where I managed sales, marketing, and internal communication. And it was during that time with a company called Maricel, which is now Synex, that I had a light bulb moment. I was working very closely with executives. I was working in an organization in an industry that was going through tremendous change and was having to change the way it thought. And all of a sudden, I had to start working with the sales force and employees to say, here's what's happening now. Here's where we're going. I knew what the executives wanted to do in terms of changing the direction of the organization, new branding, new thinking, new ways of working. And I had to make that real for employees. And it was a light bulb moment for me that I said, oh my goodness, we can make a bigger difference from the inside out than we ever could with a press release. or a news story. You know, I found this, I call it magic. You know, it's this power of somebody who's working behind the scenes because you don't go into internal communications because you want the glory. You know, when you join PR, it's because you're thinking, oh, you want to be that spokesperson, you want to be in the outside. But there's a whole group of communication professionals who'd rather be behind the scenes and would rather be helping the organization holistically and the leaders and the managers and the people make the most of that experience. And that's where I found my passion.
And without good internal comms people, the employee becomes the spokesperson in a crisis, right? So
Absolutely.
there are
And I
no
always say that. I always
spokespeople
say that
anymore.
our power is not to communicate on behalf of our organizations, but our power is in influencing how our organization, both its leaders and its employees, communicate.
That is really profound. So you've had a number of light bulb moments in your career, it seems like. Now that you're a best-selling author, you're running a series of, well, a consultancy and a series of conferences and a podcast along the Leader Like Me group. I'm going to ask you something that a listener has asked me. How do you know that you're making the right choice when you have one of those light bulb moments?
Um, I think you have to follow your instincts and in some ways, you know, follow your joy and your inspiration. And there's another part of being ready to fail because not every decision I've made, not every move I've made has always been a win. Quite a few of them is I've tried something and it worked or it didn't, and I learned from it. And I think that's a really good skill to learn yourself. I think that is part of it. What it was, I know Wayne Gretzky is not the most, loved Canadian right now, but one of the quotes that I really like from him is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
Right.
Right. And that's the thing is being able to try things and learn and do that in a safe environment, and find out, be willing to try. The reason I started consulting was I was getting close to, I'm going to tell you my age. No, I'm well, close to my age. I was getting close to 50. And I thought, I've always dreamed of consulting. And what if I try to do it? I don't want to end up, staying in house and realizing that I never took the chance. I never tried something that I always imagined doing. And that was a big leap going from a full-time job and with a big company. I led internal communications at Loblaw, largest private sector employer in the country, doing really well and was very successful. So all of a sudden making that decision to step out was a big big leap of faith.
Huge.
But I was ready to say, hopefully it works out. But if it doesn't, that's okay too.
You definitely hit a home run. You can tell my hockey analogies aren't great. You scored a goal. What happens when you've taken one of those? So a lot of our students are, or a lot of people are afraid to take that leap for fear of failure, and that was a big, well-educated, calculated risk, but still a big risk that you took. What happens when you score in your own net? Tell me a little bit about how you dust yourself
Now we've
off.
got we're two of the most non-hockey people you can imagine talking about hockey references. So I think
We're
that's
all
very funny.
Super Canadian these days, right?
Yes, yes. I think it's asking yourself, what did I learn? Right? A failure isn't a failure if you actually learn something about yourself through that process. And I try to encourage that with my children. I've got, two daughters, one who is very, very proactive and researches everything, and she's in that fail safe. She really knows what she wants, but she's done the work ahead of time. And then I've got another girl who will try everything and probably fail 50% of the time. but she's moving ahead anyway. So it does. So people are different. Some will fail safely, and other people will throw caution to the wind. Um, that is a privilege. Think about what those privileges are. That if you're able to try something when you are in a safe place, when you are learning, when you are just starting out, you start kind of developing that muscle, and you
Absolutely.
don't blame yourself when something doesn't work out.
Absolutely. And that's why work integrated learning becomes so important, right? Because there's the safety net of an instructor and classmates supporting you as you try something for a new company. And it's messy. Like real life is messy. Um,
Absolutely.
right? There's no right answer. You have been just a champion of learning and growing and think I remember a quote. I can't remember where I saw this from you, but I remember you saying, I think knowledge is extremely important, and without it, how do we grow? Put yourself back into one of the many times when you've had to pivot or or wanted to pivot or change directions in your career. What do you wish that you knew then that you know now? What did you learn that you wish you could go into?
That's a really good question, Christine. What did I wish I knew then? And, I think it is that it's that whole idea that you're never a failure if you tried, right? If you learn something new, that was the win. That
Love
that
that.
it was part of the journey. And I think that curiosity, I've been using this a lot lately. It's better to be curious than judgmental. And if you can apply that to yourself, that's a big step. I think we need to be kinder out there in general. And if we approach things with curiosity externally, and then also be kinder to ourselves by approaching it with curiosity, it makes a big difference. It's that little bit of a pivot that helps you think differently. So it makes you, when something is going wrong, we're living in a world of chaos right now, right? And the more we ask questions about why did that person think that way? Why did they say things the way they did? Why, what it was behind it? That curiosity puts you in a very different mindset than if you're, whereas being so judgy about it, it creates those divisions, and it creates that us and them. And I think that is a really good um, practice, if you will.
I can hear your psychology degree and your HR, your postgraduate in public relations coming out in throughout that whole sentence.
Mm.
Um, Tell me a little bit about your company does just this for organizations, right? You help organizations learn to adapt and grow and change and include diversity, um,
Yeah.
and be less rigid.
Yeah,
Are
I've
there
got two companies, right? So it's always interesting to see. So when we've got inner strength communication is mostly focused on internal communications, change management, employee engagement,
Yeah.
but it is really about building strength from the inside out.
Yeah.
A leader like me is very much about delivering, creating inclusive cultures. And I think they're both connected. When we look at a leader like me, it really was about global, thinking more global, whereas a lot of the work I do with Inner Strength tends to be in North America. Um, and I think it is, there's a lot of psychology in both, right? Because we're taking people through changes, whether we're talking about DEI and inclusive cultures, or we're talking about internal communications and organizations that are just changing. Um, Change is constant. We and being able to create calm, create some sort of collective and community when we're going through those changes makes a really big difference. So you're absolutely right, Christine, that I use a lot of my philosophy and psychology in thinking about how people react so that we can actually help them move forward in organizations, whatever the changes that's going on.
If you could leave our listeners with some advice, so they may be a little earlier on in their journey, they may be mid-career, kind of figuring out, they know there's a pivot, right? Jobs have changed drastically in the last 6 months.
Yes.
Goodness knows what the tariffs and the current political climate will do to people's there will be there are a lot of worried people in Ontario and in Canada right
Yes.
now. What's
Yes.
your advice for them?
I think it is making sure you understand who you are and what you have to give, and being able to find places to showcase your skills and your knowledge. And sometimes that means, finding a job to do it. But other times, one of the things that really helped me early in my career was volunteering and being able to build that portfolio and build that skill and build that knowledge by lending my expertise to an organization. For me, it was IABC, with the International Association of Business Communicators. So having those skills, being able to supplement what I was doing in-house, that wasn't necessarily the skills I imagined I was going to need to build for the future. I took the time when I didn't have when I had the ability and the time and motivation and to do it, to spend my time doing some volunteering.
Well,
And
and
you,
yeah.
sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's something that people don't think of, but I've always encouraged my life. What I realize, and I do the same thing with my kids, is that there is your home life, your personal life, you've got your professional life, and you've got the part of you that gives back. And that's always for my girls, it was with Girl Guides early on, so that they've always had that, what's the extracurricular stuff that they're doing that fills their cup.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
And it's so important not just to fill your own cup, but that's where so much of the job market, whether you're an independent contractor or employed, comes down to who you know, right? You can give people
Absolutely.
the what you know, but the who you know, they have to help you build. They have to help grow that network. And volunteering is such, that's where I met you, is through
Yes.
IABC and volunteering. And that's my professional network is so much more rich because of those volunteer opportunities.
And it's amazing how many of the work, how much of the work that I do, I get from people I knew and stayed in touch with. So that network, both your professional network and your, personal and volunteer network, plays such a great role in helping you land those jobs and get a foot in the door.
That's a beautiful note to end on. This has been such an engaging conversation. Thank you, Priya. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And you've done so much good for the communications world, for education, and for Canadians in general. Just you've really built that giving comes back and you've really built your network and added good into the world. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Christine.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Successfully Ambiguous. Be sure to leave your comments below or find me on LinkedIn to ask your career questions. Like or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join us for the next episode so that when opportunity knocks, you'll be ready to answer.